The so-called exclusive that dropped into the bloodstream of the British press this week had all the makings of another tabloid performance. A headline stuffed with exaggeration, a flimsy foundation dressed up as insider revelation, and an unmistakable whiff of desperation for clicks. It came under the byline of Charlotte Griffiths, the Mail on Sunday and GB News editor-at-large, whose career has been built not on balanced journalism, but on the sharp, hollow architecture of clickbait. The story screamed with urgency. King Charles and Prince Harry were to meet regularly, royal aides were plotting a unity display, and the first public appearance in 6 years was suddenly on the cards. A shocking revelation? Hardly. It was, in truth, another recycled attempt to frame a fractured relationship in the guise of staged reconciliation. What makes it more insidious is the machinery behind it. Griffiths and her GB News brand of manufactured outrage and false promise, weaponizing a headline for attention rather than truth. For years, Charlotte Griffiths has fashioned herself as a gatekeeper of royal scoops, dangling exclusives that rarely hold under scrutiny. Her style is one of inflation, to make the ordinary appear sensational and the tentative appear confirmed. Yet in the realm of monarchy reporting, her tactics are especially corrosive because they prey on public fascination with family fracture, while exploiting Prince Harry's every move as though it were a plot in a soap opera. The leaked reality behind this week's headline is not a breakthrough in diplomacy or a touching father-son reunion. Instead, it is the cynical marketing strategy of a newsroom that thrives on feeding readers with half-truths, couched in emotionally manipulative packaging. Griffiths is not reporting, she is peddling bait, and GB News, long derided for its distortion of facts, is only too happy to push such narratives under the mask of journalism. Clickbait thrives on one central principle: promise more than you deliver. This headline promised history in the making, the king and his estranged sons side by side in a symbolic gesture of healing. But dig beneath the surface, and what emerges is little more than speculation wrapped in royal aides' whispers, a hypothetical event presented as imminent certainty. The public is meant to believe that the monarchy is on the cusp of mending itself, that the pain of the past 6 years, marked by revelations, interviews, accusations, and relentless tabloid warfare, can be erased by the scheduling of a photo opportunity. This is not reporting, it is theatre, and Griffiths is its playwright. The irony, of course, is that while the story pretends to be about unity, the method by which it has been sold to the public is one of division, riling up those who demand Harry's submission to the royal fold, while baiting those who know better into outrage at the obvious manipulation. The leaked discussions behind this story paint a very different picture. Palace aides, faced with dwindling public trust and headlines dominated by royal scandals, are desperate for a distraction. What better than to float the idea of Charles and Harry meeting, even if no such concrete plan has been finalised? What better than to manufacture an illusion of healing so that tabloids can plaster their front pages with photographs that may never materialise? And what better than to hand the scoop to a media figure like Charlotte Griffiths, who has long mastered the art of sensationalising uncertainty into GB News thrives on outrage. The Mail on Sunday thrives on clicks. Griffiths thrives on being the conduit for both. Together, they have turned this headline into a masterclass in clickbait manipulation. It is worth examining just how dangerous this style of reporting has become. Every time Griffiths and her peers push headlines that stretch truth into fantasy, they contribute to the erosion of public trust in journalism. Readers may click, may share, may debate online, but at the heart of it is an increasingly hollow core. The public begins to wonder, what is real? Is there truly unity between king and son, or is it all palace theatre amplified by tabloid echo chambers? Was there ever substance to these claims? Or are we once again pawns in a game designed to generate traffic for websites struggling to stay relevant in a digital world dominated by algorithms? When journalists abandon clarity for clicks, they leave behind the very ethics their profession is meant to stand on. Charlotte Griffiths represents this shift, from journalism as service to journalism as spectacle. And spectacle sells. For Griffiths, Prince Harry is the perfect subject for exploitation because he embodies contradiction. Royal, yet self-exiled, beloved, yet vilified, a man who speaks his truth in a world that demands silence. His every appearance is news. His every absence is also news. By attaching Harry's name to her clickbait, Griffiths guarantees traffic. But what of the consequences for Harry himself, for Meghan, for their children? They are reduced to caricatures in a drama orchestrated for online engagement, their humanity stripped away in favour of narrative convenience. It is no accident that Griffiths and GB News so often slant their coverage to cast Harry as reckless, Meghan as manipulative, and the royal family as reluctant martyrs of their rebellion. The leaked strategy is clear. Frame every story as a morality play where Harry must repent, Charles must be patient, and William must remain the steady hand. But reality is far messier than Griffiths would ever admit, and far less convenient for her headlines. The genius, or the deceit, depending on how you view it, of Charlotte Griffiths' clickbait formula lies in how she weaponizes vagueness. Words like on the cards, set to, and expected appear again and again in her headlines, slippery phrases that sound definitive but carry no actual commitment. They give the illusion of certainty while offering the writer a convenient escape hatch. If the event doesn't happen, if Harry and Charles never stand side by side, the defence is already built into the copy. It was on the cards, but perhaps the cards shifted. This kind of linguistic sleight of hand is the bedrock of clickbait journalism, and Griffiths wields it with the precision of a surgeon. Except her goal is not to heal, but to slice away at the line between fact and speculation. What makes this practice especially toxic is that it is wrapped in the language of exclusivity. By tagging her piece with the word exclusive, Griffiths gives the impression that she possesses privileged knowledge, that she is letting the public in on something they would otherwise never know. Yet, the so-called scoop is often little more than recycled chatter that has circulated in palace-adjacent circles for weeks. Other outlets may have deemed it too flimsy to print. Griffiths, however, has no such hesitation. If it can be spun into traffic, it is good enough. And when that exclusive later fizzles out into nothingness, the cycle simply resets. Tomorrow will bring another headline, another tease of revelation, another round of manipulated attention. The public is expected to forget yesterday's failure in the thrill of today's promise. But people do not forget as easily as tabloids assume. Increasingly, readers recognize the pattern. They notice the endless cycle of exclusive reconciliations, shocking revelations, and bombshell interviews that never quite live up to their billing. They see how the same journalists who vilify Harry and Meghan one week pivot to suggesting reconciliation the next, not because anything substantive has changed, but because the pendulum of outrage must keep swinging to generate clicks. Griffiths is not alone in this practice, but she has become one of its most visible practitioners, her name synonymous with the sort of tabloid sensationalism that prioritizes attention over integrity. The leaked commentary among media watchers reveals the cynicism behind this strategy. Editors at GB News and the Mail on Sunday understand perfectly well that royal stories are their golden ticket. In an era when newspapers struggle to stay afloat and television audiences are splintered across platforms, the monarchy remains a constant draw. And no royal story attracts quite like Harry. He is the lightning rod, the prince who dared to walk away, the man who both fascinates and infuriates. His name guarantees that even those who claim indifference will click, if only to fuel their outrage or confirm their suspicions. This is the economy that Griffiths exploits. She doesn't need truth. She needs Harry's name in bold type, paired with words like exclusive and reunion. The formula is simple, predictable, and endlessly lucrative. But at what cost? For Harry, the cost is obvious. The perpetual invasion of privacy, the stripping of agency, the constant misrepresentation of his choices. For Charles, the cost is subtler, but no less real. Being used as a character in a narrative he may not control, expected to deliver symbolic gestures of unity on a timeline dictated not by his family's healing, but by tabloid appetite. For the public, the cost is erosion. Erosion of trust in media, erosion of faith in institutions, erosion of the line between truth and fabrication. Every time Griffiths pushes a clickbait headline, that erosion deepens. It is also worth asking, who benefits? The palace, perhaps in the short term, if the illusion of unity boosts public confidence. Griffiths, certainly, as her byline circulates and her status as a supposed insider is reinforced. GB News, absolutely, as it thrives on the traffic and the outrage her stories provoke. But the public does not benefit. nor do the individuals whose lives are twisted into narratives they did not consent to. This is not journalism in service of truth. It is journalism in service of profit, a trade-off that corrodes the very foundations of a free press. Charlotte Griffiths' defenders often argue that she is simply giving the people what they want, that the appetite for royal gossip is insatiable and she is merely feeding it. But this argument collapses under scrutiny. Journalism is not meant to be a mere vending machine of sensationalism. It carries responsibility to inform, to clarify, to challenge. Feeding people empty calories of gossip does not meet that responsibility. It panders to the lowest common denominator and calls it service. It is, in fact, exploitation of public curiosity, of royal vulnerability, of truth itself. The irony is that Griffiths positions herself as a truth-teller, someone unafraid to expose the supposed hypocrisies of Harry and Meghan, someone who claims to strip away their PR sheen. Yet in doing so, she engages in the very hypocrisy she decries. She condemns others for spin while spinning her own narratives out of half-truths. She accuses others of manipulation while manipulating headlines for attention. She frames herself as the antidote to royal secrecy while building her career on the illusion of access she rarely substantiates. It is a performance, and like all performances, it relies on the audience's willingness to suspend disbelief. The tragedy is that too many still do. There is also a darker undertone to Griffiths' work, one that aligns with the ethos of GB News more broadly. The network has built its brand on outrage, division, and the cultivation of grievance. Its coverage of Harry and Meghan in particular often veers into the cruel and the xenophobic, framing them as symbols of betrayal, weakness, or foreign intrusion. Griffiths, by lending her byline and voice to this machinery, participates in the amplification of that cruelty. She is not merely a passive reporter of palace gossip, but an active contributor to a media ecosystem that thrives on tearing people down. When her headline promises unity, it is not out of hope for healing, but out of a desire to stoke debate, to bait both supporters and detractors into engagement. The unity being sold is not real. The division being fueled is. This is why the word leaked has become so central to the framing of this exposé. What is leaked here is not just the palace chatter about possible appearances, but the very strategy behind how those whispers are weaponized by editors like Griffiths. The leak reveals a playbook. Inflate speculation, tag it as exclusive, push it through platforms like GB News, reap the clicks, repeat. It is a cycle that serves everyone but the truth. And in exposing this cycle, the hope is not merely to criticize one editor, but to illuminate the broader rot in a media culture that prioritizes spectacle over substance. The public deserves better. They deserve headlines that inform rather than mislead, reporting that clarifies rather than confuses, journalism that serves rather than exploits. They deserve a press that does not see them as marks to be manipulated, but as citizens to be respected. Charlotte Griffiths' latest headline is a case study in what happens when those principles are abandoned. It is a shiny lure, dangled before an audience hungry for meaning, but beneath the shine lies nothing but air. And until the public demands more, until editors are held accountable for their manipulations, the cycle will continue, each exclusive emptier than the last. To all my curious Sussex family, thank you all for watching, and do not forget to subscribe, like, and put a comment. Bye-bye, see you then in our comments section.